Comanche girl tied to a tree for the beasts, until a rancher saved her with one bullet. The sun was already low in the sky when the girl was pushed forward across the dry land. Dust rose with every step she took, sticking to her skin and hair. She did not cry anymore. Her tears had already dried, leaving her eyes sore and burning. She was very young, too young to understand why this was happening, but old enough to feel fear deep in her chest. She had grown up on open land, where the wind carried voices and stories. Her life had been simple. She helped the women gather food, listened to elders speak, and ran barefoot with other children under the wide sky. That morning had started like many others. She remembered the smell of smoke from cooking fires and the sound of laughter. Then everything changed. Strangers came with loud voices and anger. People ran. Someone grabbed her arm and she was pulled away from everything she knew. The world became noise, dust, and confusion. She did not know how long she walked after that. Time lost meaning. Her feet hurt, her throat felt dry, and her heart felt like it might break. When they stopped, the land around them was empty and quiet. There were no homes, no people, only trees and tall grass. One of the men pointed to a large tree standing alone. Without much effort, they tied her hands with a rough rope and pushed her against the trunk. The rope scratched her skin. She tried to pull away, but she was weak and exhausted. No one explained anything to her. No one looked at her face for long. To them, she was not a child. She was something else, something they did not want to think about. After they finished, they turned and left. Their footsteps faded. The sound of their voices disappeared into the distance. The girl was alone. At first, she did not move. She stood still, pressed against the tree, listening. The wind moved through the grass, making soft sounds. Birds flew overhead. Everything looked calm, but her heart was beating fast. She tried to call out, but her voice came out small and weak. No one answered. She tested the rope again. It was tight and strong. Her hands began to ache. She leaned her head back against the tree and closed her eyes. She tried to remember her mother's face. She tried to remember the sound of her people singing at night. Those memories were the only thing that made her feel warm. As time passed, the sky slowly changed color. The bright light softened, turning orange and gold. Long shadows stretched across the ground. The girl had seen sunsets before, but never like this. This one felt heavy, like it was closing a door. The air grew cooler. She began to shake, partly from the cold and partly from fear. She had been taught about the land, about listening and surviving, but she had never been alone like this. She wondered if anyone would come back for her. She wondered if she would see another morning. Sounds began to change as the day faded. The birds grew quiet. Other noises replaced them, deeper sounds that made her stomach tighten. She did not know what made them, but she knew enough to feel afraid. She pressed herself closer to the tree as if it could protect her. Her arms hurt badly now. The rope had rubbed her skin raw. She tried to shift her weight, but it did not help much. Her mouth felt dry. She had not had water for a long time. Her thoughts became slow, drifting in and out. She began to talk softly to herself, using the words her elders once used to calm children. She told herself to be brave. She told herself that the land had always taken care of her people. Still, fear crept in, quiet and heavy. She thought about how small she felt in such a big world. The sky above her seemed endless. The tree she was tied to was old and strong, its bark rough against her back. She wondered how many seasons it had seen, how many storms. She wished she could be like the tree, strong and unmoving. As the light faded completely, the land became shapes and shadows. The moon had not yet risen. Darkness wrapped around her. Every small sound felt close and loud. Her breathing became shallow. She tried not to imagine what might be out there, but her mind would not listen. She remembered stories told by the fire, stories meant to teach children to be careful. Those stories now felt too real. She squeezed her eyes shut and prayed in the only way she knew, not with words but with hope. Time moved slowly. Her legs grew tired from standing. She tried to bend her knees a little, but the rope kept her upright. Pain spread through her shoulders and arms. Tears slipped down her face again, silent and hot. She wondered if this was how people disappeared, how the land swallowed them without anyone knowing. The thought made her chest feel tight. She wanted to scream, but she was afraid to make noise. Fear told her to stay quiet, to be small. Far away, something moved. She could not see it, but she heard it. Her heart jumped. She strained her ears, trying to understand the sound. It came again, closer this time. Her whole body stiffened. She pressed her back hard against the tree, wishing she could melt into it. Her breath caught in her throat. She felt completely helpless. The world felt unfair and cruel, and she did not know why she had been chosen for this. Then, just as fear threatened to swallow her, another sound drifted through the night. It was faint at first, almost lost in the wind. A different sound, a steady rhythm. She frowned, listening harder. It sounded like movement, but not like before. It was slower, heavier. She did not understand it, but it made her pause. She lifted her head, trying to see through the darkness. The sound grew clearer. It came from far away, then closer. She felt a strange mix of fear and hope. Her heart beat faster, but this time it was different. This sound did not feel like the others. Somewhere in the distance, a figure moved across the land, unaware that a young girl was tied to a tree, waiting, afraid, and holding onto the smallest thread of hope. The night was not finished with her yet, and her story was only beginning. The night deepened, and the young girl's fear grew with every passing moment. She had been standing against the tree for what felt like hours. The sky was dark now, filled with stars that seemed so far away, like they belonged to another world entirely. She shivered in the cool night air. Her body ached from the rope, her arms and shoulders burning from the pressure. She tried to move quietly, testing the rope again, but it had not loosened an inch. Every small motion only made her wrists rower. She could hear the sounds of the wilderness all around her. The wind whispered through the tall grass, creating eerie patterns of sound that made her imagination run wild. Every rustle or crack of a branch made her flinch. She could hear the occasional distant howl of a coyote or wolf. It was a sound she had grown up hearing, but now it felt menacing, like the creatures were coming for her specifically. Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat echoing her fear. She tried to calm herself. She remembered the lessons her mother had taught her. Always stay alert, always listen, and never let fear control you. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, trying to focus on something familiar. She imagined the soft touch of her mother's hand and the warmth of her people around the fire. The memory brought her some comfort, though it was fleeting. The rope cut into her skin as she shifted slightly, and the harsh reality returned. Hours passed slowly. The girl had no way to know how much time had gone by, but her stomach reminded her she had not eaten anything since the morning. Hunger mixed with thirst, making her head feel dizzy. She tried to remember the last meal she had, a simple dish of corn and vegetables. Her mouth watered at the memory, but there was nothing here for her to eat or drink. The thought made her feel weak, but she refused to give up. Fear was not her only companion. Loneliness pressed heavily against her heart. She missed her family more than ever. She longed to hear her mother's voice, to see the familiar faces of the people she loved. Tears slipped down her cheeks again. She cried quietly, afraid that any sound might attract danger. Despite everything, she refused to let despair take over completely. She whispered softly to herself, telling herself to be brave, to survive, to hold on. As the night grew darker, new noises filled the air. She could hear the distant snapping of branches, the crunching of leaves underfoot. Something was moving closer, something she could not see clearly. Her breath caught in her throat. She wanted to call out, but the fear of making noise kept her silent. Her mind raced with terrible possibilities. She thought about what might happen if wild animals reached her before anyone came to save her. The girl hugged the tree tightly, using it as a shield against the unknown. She felt the rough bark against her skin, grounding her somehow. She thought about the stories her elders had told her about the land and its creatures. She remembered that even in the darkest moments, survival was possible if one remained calm and aware. She forced herself to focus on each sound, each movement. Her senses sharpened in a way she had never experienced before. Hours passed, and the girl began to notice the small, almost invisible changes in the environment. She could feel the night chill growing colder. The wind shifted direction, brushing her face with a cold, almost stinging touch. The grass around her rustled more, and the distant noises became more distinct. She could hear the soft padding of paws on the ground, the quiet flutter of wings as birds settled for the night. Each sound made her tense but also kept her alert. Exhaustion began to take its toll. Her legs were tired from standing, her arms ached from the rope, and her mind struggled to stay focused. But still, she refused to give in to despair. She thought about her family, about the life she wanted to return to, and it gave her strength. She imagined herself back home, running through the fields, free and safe. That vision, small as it was, became a source of hope she clung to. Suddenly she heard something unusual, a steady, rhythmic sound that was different from the noises of the night. It was deliberate, not random. It grew louder, closer, and more defined. Her heart leaped. She held her breath, straining to listen. The sound was not an animal. It was a human moving carefully across the land. Relief and fear collided inside her. She did not know whether this new presence was friend or foe. The girl tried to call out, but only a whisper escaped her lips. She was too weak, too afraid. Instead, she stayed still, watching and listening. She hoped that whoever it was might see her, but she did not dare make a sudden move. Every nerve in her body was alert. The wind carried the sound closer, and she could just make out the shape of a figure moving among the shadows. Time seemed to stretch endlessly. She watched the figure carefully, her mind racing with possibilities. Perhaps this was someone who could save her, someone who could free her from the rope and protect her. Or perhaps it was another threat, someone who had come to harm her. The girl's fear mixed with hope, creating a strange tension that made her pulse pound even faster. The figure moved closer and she could finally make out more details. It was a man, riding a horse slowly, scanning the area as if he was searching for something or someone. He was careful, deliberate, and seemed strong and experienced. The girl's heart leapt with a mixture of fear and hope. Could he be the one to save her? She wanted to believe it, though a part of her remained cautious. The man slowed his horse as he drew near, his eyes scanning the land. He noticed the tree standing alone against the dark horizon. Something about it caught his attention. He guided his horse closer, and then, finally, he saw her, a small figure tied to the tree, trembling in the cold night. Time seemed to stop for the girl. She could hardly believe what she saw, a human being, someone who might save her. Her throat was dry, her voice weak, but she whispered a small sound, a plea for help. The man dismounted quickly, moving with careful urgency. He approached the tree, keeping his eyes on her, making sure not to scare her further. The girl watched him, her fear slowly blending with hope. The rope around her wrists cut sharply into her skin, but she could not struggle much. She was exhausted, weak from hunger and thirst, and terrified from the long hours alone. But she wanted to survive. She wanted to trust this stranger, even though it was difficult. The man reached her and knelt beside her. He spoke softly, gently, in a voice that tried to be calm and reassuring. The girl could not understand all of his words, but the tone itself was enough to begin easing her fear. He carefully examined the rope, checking for a way to untie her quickly and safely. His hands were steady and sure, showing experience and care. The girl stayed as still as she could, letting him work. She noticed the kindness in his eyes, the determination to help her. Slowly, she began to believe that she might actually survive this night. Her trembling eased slightly, though her body remained sore and stiff from being tied for so long. After what felt like hours, though it was likely only minutes, the man freed her from the rope. She fell forward into his arms, exhausted, weak, and almost unable to stand. He supported her carefully, helping her sit down and offering her a small bit of water. The cool liquid touched her lips, and she drank eagerly, her body responding to the first relief it had felt in hours. The girl's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were different. They were tears of relief, of hope, and of gratitude. She realized that someone had come for her, that she was no longer alone. She stayed close to the man, letting him guide her to a safer spot, away from the tree and the open land where danger had felt endless. For the first time since she had been tied, she felt a small sense of safety. The man stayed with her, keeping watch, and the sounds of the night now seemed less threatening. Though she was still weak, hungry, and scared, she began to feel a tiny spark of strength inside her. The night continued, but it no longer felt endless and hopeless. With someone by her side, the girl realized she could survive. She could live. She could hold on to hope. The man, alert and caring, remained her protector through the dark hours. And in those quiet, fragile moments, she understood something important. Even in the darkest times, kindness could be found, and it could change everything. The first signs of dawn were just starting to appear on the horizon, painting the sky with faint streaks of orange and pink. The young girl, still trembling from the night's terror, clung to the man who had saved her. He was careful, gentle, making sure she did not hurt herself as they moved across the open land. Her legs were stiff and sore, and she had to lean heavily on him for support. Every step was slow, but every step also brought her further away from the danger that had held her captive. The man's face was serious and focused. He kept scanning the area as they moved. He had grown up on the land, knew its dangers and its rhythms, and he understood that the night was not the only threat. Wild animals roamed freely, and some of them had sharp teeth and claws. He had seen how quickly things could turn deadly on the open plains. And so, even though he had already saved the girl from immediate danger, he remained alert, ready for anything that might come. The girl could barely keep her eyes open. Exhaustion weighed on her like a heavy blanket. Her stomach still ached from hunger, and her throat was dry. She had not slept, had not eaten, and had spent hours in terror. Yet, despite everything, a spark of hope burned within her. She knew she was alive, and that was something she had not been sure of just hours ago. She had survived the night, and now, with someone watching over her, she might even survive the day. As they walked, the man kept speaking softly to her, though she did not understand all the words. His tone was calm and soothing, meant to reassure her. He offered her small sips of water from the bottle he carried, and she drank slowly, careful not to waste any of it. The simple act of drinking felt like a blessing, and she felt a small measure of strength returning to her. Suddenly, a sharp noise cut through the quiet morning. It was a low, threatening growl, followed by the sound of heavy paws moving through the grass. The girl froze, her heart leaping into her throat. She pressed closer to the man, seeking protection. He did not panic. Instead, he immediately assessed the situation. He knew what was coming. Wild animals, perhaps wolves or coyotes, had been attracted to the sounds of the night, to the scent of a child, and to the unfamiliar presence of humans. The man reached for his rifle. His movements were steady and practiced. He knew he had only one chance to act if the animals were close enough to attack. Every muscle in his body tensed with focus. The girl could feel the energy in him, the calm determination. Though she did not fully understand what was happening, she instinctively knew that this man could protect her. She held her breath as he aimed carefully, his eyes scanning the moving shadows in the grass. The growls grew louder, closer. She could now see the shapes emerging from the shadows, two large wolves, their eyes glinting with hunger. The girl's small body shook with fear. She wanted to run, but she could not. She had nowhere to go, and the rope marks on her wrists reminded her how weak she had been just hours ago. She closed her eyes tightly, praying silently, hoping that the man would save her once again. The man fired. The sound of the rifle echoed across the open land, startling birds into the sky. One of the wolves yelped and ran off, frightened by the sudden, sharp noise. The other hesitated, its instincts warning it of danger. The man did not lower his weapon until he was sure the immediate threat had passed. The girl peeked through her lashes, and when she saw the wolves retreating, relief washed over her. She felt her knees go weak, and the man immediately caught her, steadying her once more. "Safe," he said softly, though she only understood the tone, not the words. He lowered the rifle and held it ready just in case. His eyes scanned the horizon for any other threats. The girl clung to him, grateful beyond words. For the first time since being tied to the tree, she felt that she was truly safe. They continued walking, moving slowly across the plains. The land was vast and open, with rolling hills and patches of trees here and there. The morning sun began to warm the earth, and the shadows of the night faded away. The girl could feel the warmth on her face, and it reminded her of mornings spent at home, playing under the open sky. That memory, small as it was, gave her courage. She realized that she could survive this, with the help of the man who had saved her. Hours passed as they made their way toward a safer place. The man carried her when her legs could not keep up, resting her small body against his chest. He knew that any rest they took had to be brief, as danger could be anywhere. Yet, despite the urgency, he also gave her time to recover, offering small bits of water and words of reassurance. Each moment of care strengthened her trust in him. As the day grew brighter, they reached a small area near a stream, where the grass was softer and the shade of trees offered protection from the sun. The man sat her down gently, letting her rest. She leaned against the ground, exhausted, feeling the cool earth beneath her. Her body ached from the long night, from fear, and from the constant tension of waiting. For the first time, she allowed herself to close her eyes and take a moment to breathe. The man began to prepare a small area for her to rest safely. He moved carefully, gathering sticks and leaves to create a makeshift bed. He spoke softly, encouraging her to drink more water and try to eat a small piece of bread he had in his pack. The girl hesitated at first, still too frightened to trust fully. But hunger and thirst won over her fear. She took small bites, savoring each one. The taste of food, simple as it was, felt like a miracle. While she rested, the man kept watch. He knew that their safety was not guaranteed. The land was wild and danger could appear at any moment. He remained alert, scanning the horizon, listening for any sound that might indicate trouble. The girl watched him, understanding slowly that his strength and experience were protecting her. She realized that her survival depended on him, at least for now. Despite the tension, small moments of calm appeared. The girl began to ask questions, though her words were broken and hesitant. The man answered as best as he could, using gestures and simple words. Though they did not speak the same language, a form of understanding began to grow between them. She could see his kindness, his patience, and his determination to keep her safe. As the sun climbed higher, the girl's strength began to return slowly. She could move more easily, stretch her arms and legs, and begin to walk with his support. The man helped her, guiding her across the uneven ground. Each step was a victory. Each movement reminded her that she was alive, that she could survive, and that the world was not entirely cruel. Even as she regained some strength, fear remained. She could not forget the night, the rope cutting into her wrists, the terrifying sounds of the wilderness, and the uncertainty of who had left her there. Yet, the man's presence gave her courage. She realized that fear could be faced, that danger could be survived, and that help could come when it was needed most. The day wore on, and the girl and the man moved steadily toward a more secure location. They did not speak much, but their connection grew stronger through gestures, shared glances, and the simple act of surviving together. She began to trust him more with each passing hour. She realized that she could rely on him to guide her, to protect her, and to help her find safety. By late afternoon, they reached a small ranch house on the edge of the plains. Smoke rose from a chimney, and the sound of animals in the yard indicated that people lived there. The girl felt a flicker of hope, wondering if she could finally be safe, surrounded by human care rather than wilderness threats. The man led her inside, ensuring that the house was secure before letting her rest. Inside, the girl finally allowed herself to relax completely. She drank more water, ate a small meal, and leaned against the man's side, feeling the exhaustion leave her body gradually. For the first time since being tied to the tree, she felt a sense of safety and comfort. She realized that she had survived, that she had been rescued, and that her life might continue. The man stayed with her through the evening, keeping watch and offering reassurance. Though the night still lay ahead, it would no longer be filled with terror. She had someone to protect her, someone who had acted bravely when her life was in danger. And for the first time since that dreadful morning, she allowed herself to feel hope, not just a small spark, but a real growing feeling that she might survive, thrive, and one day return to the life she had known. The morning sun streamed gently through the small windows of the ranch house, bringing warmth and light into the room where the girl slept. She had finally managed to rest, though her sleep was light and filled with half-dreams of fear and hope. Her body ached less than before, and her mind, though still carrying the memory of terror, felt slightly calmer. The rancher sat nearby, watching over her as he had promised, ensuring that she was safe. When she stirred, he offered her a small sip of water and a piece of bread. She took it slowly, careful not to choke. Her hands trembled, but she ate, feeling the strength return bit by bit. The simple act of eating and drinking, something she had taken for granted before, now felt like a blessing. Her body began to respond, and she realized that she could survive this, that she could continue living. The rancher helped her sit up properly, supporting her carefully. He spoke softly, pointing to her arms and wrists, showing concern for the injuries left by the rope. She nodded, understanding enough to know that he wanted to help. He fetched a clean cloth and gently cleaned the cuts, applying some ointment to soothe the pain. The girl winced, but she did not cry. She had cried enough already, and now she allowed herself only small shivers of discomfort. After tending to her wounds, the rancher led her to a chair by the window. The sunlight fell on her face, warming her skin and giving her a small sense of comfort. He spoke softly again, using gestures to show that she could rest there, that she was safe, and that no harm would come to her here. She leaned against the chair, feeling a quiet sense of relief she had not known for a long time. For the first time since being tied to the tree, she had a chance to think clearly. She remembered the terror of the night before, the rope, the wolves, the loneliness. But now she also remembered the courage of the man who had come to her rescue. His actions had saved her life. She realized that hope, even a small spark of it, could grow into strength. The rancher left her for a short while to prepare some food. When he returned, he carried a simple meal, warm bread, a bit of cooked meat, and some fruit. He placed it before her, smiling gently. She hesitated, unsure whether she could trust this new situation fully. But her hunger was strong, and she began to eat. Each bite was a reminder that she was alive, that someone cared enough to feed her, and that she could start to regain her strength. As the day passed, she began to notice the sounds of life around the ranch. Chickens clucked in the yard, a dog barked in the distance, and the wind moved gently through the trees. It was a soundscape different from the terrifying noises of the night before. Here, life felt alive but safe. She began to understand that the world could hold both danger and kindness, and that she had now found a place of the latter. The rancher continued to care for her gently throughout the day. He offered water, encouraged her to rest, and spoke in soft, patient tones. He did not rush her, did not push her beyond what she could handle. Slowly, she began to trust him. Small gestures, like the way he checked her injuries or guided her safely around the room, built a bridge of understanding between them. Though she could not speak much and he did not know her language fully, trust grew through actions rather than words. By mid-afternoon, the girl felt strong enough to stand and move around the room a little. She was still unsteady, but she could take short steps with the rancher's support. He held her hand, guiding her carefully, showing patience and care. Each movement was a small victory, a reminder that she was alive and regaining control over her body. She felt a quiet pride, even in her fear, that she could begin to recover. The rancher then led her outside, to a small garden where vegetables grew in neat rows. The sunlight was warm on her face, and the air was filled with the scent of earth and plants. She felt a small spark of happiness, a feeling she had not known in a long time. She could see the simple life of the ranch, people and animals moving together in harmony, and it reminded her that the world could be kind, not just cruel. For the next several days, the rancher continued to care for her. He showed her how to drink water safely, how to eat slowly, and how to rest. He checked her injuries daily, making sure they healed properly. The girl began to feel stronger each day. Her body recovered from the exhaustion of the night tied to the tree, and her mind slowly began to relax. Though memories of the terrifying night remained, they were no longer all-consuming. During this time, the girl began to learn about the ranch. She watched the animals, seeing how they were fed and cared for. She helped in small ways, carrying water or gathering eggs, though always under the rancher's careful supervision. These small tasks gave her a sense of purpose, a feeling that she could contribute rather than only survive. It was empowering, helping her regain some control over her life. At night, she sometimes woke from bad dreams. The memory of being tied to the tree, of the wolves, and of the fear of dying in the darkness returned briefly. But each time the rancher was there. He would gently reassure her, using his voice and gestures, showing that she was safe now. She learned that the world had changed for her. It was no longer just a place of fear. She had someone watching over her, keeping her alive and helping her heal. Slowly, trust grew between them. She began to follow him willingly, to look to him for guidance, and to feel comforted by his presence. Though she still spoke little, she learned to smile when he smiled, to nod when he offered reassurance, and to accept the care he provided. This trust became a foundation, one that would help her feel safe and begin to rebuild the parts of herself that had been broken by fear. The rancher also introduced her to other people at the ranch. He showed her that life could be kind, that humans could offer protection, guidance, and compassion. She saw the animals cared for, the land tended with patience and care, and began to understand that the world could have order and safety as well as danger. These small lessons built her confidence, slowly turning fear into cautious hope. As the days passed, the girl's body grew stronger. She walked longer distances, ate regular meals, and began to sleep more soundly. But even as her body healed, her mind worked through the trauma she had experienced. She remembered the terror, the loneliness, and the cold of the night she had spent tied to the tree. Yet she also remembered the courage of the rancher, the warmth of safety, and the kindness that had reached her when she needed it most. One afternoon, the rancher led her to a small hill overlooking the plains. She could see far into the distance, the wide open land stretching endlessly. It reminded her of where she had been tied, alone and terrified. But now she was not alone. She was safe, protected, and beginning to heal. She realized that even the most terrifying experiences could be overcome, and that help could come in unexpected ways. The girl began to share small pieces of her story with the rancher, using gestures and drawings in the dirt. She showed where she had been tied, how she had felt, and how she had survived. The rancher listened patiently, never judging, always showing that he cared. This understanding helped her release some of the fear she had held inside. She realized that sharing her story could lessen the burden of memory and that she was not powerless anymore. Over time, the bond between the girl and the rancher grew stronger. She learned to trust him completely, relying on his guidance and protection. He, in turn, grew protective of her, caring for her like one would care for a child in need. Together, they created a small world of safety, learning to navigate the land, the dangers, and the challenges of everyday life. By the end of several weeks, the girl had transformed from a trembling, terrified child into a young person capable of moving, thinking, and acting with cautious confidence. She still remembered the terror of the night tied to the tree, but it no longer ruled her. She had survived, healed, and learned that kindness could exist even in the harshest places. The rancher had not only saved her life, he had given her a second chance, teaching her that courage, care, and trust could rebuild what fear had broken. She knew that the journey ahead would not be easy, but for the first time, she believed in her own strength. She could face the world, knowing that help, kindness, and courage could exist in even the darkest times. And in that small ranch house, with sunlight warming her face and a caring hand always ready to guide her, the girl understood something that would stay with her forever. Even after terror, even after fear, life could still offer safety, hope, and healing. The sun rose slowly over the plains, casting golden light over the small ranch. The young girl had spent weeks in this safe place, gradually regaining her strength and learning to trust again. Her body was no longer trembling with constant fear, and her mind had begun to feel calm. But she knew that her journey was not yet over. She had survived the night tied to the tree, she had faced the wilderness, and she had found safety. But her heart longed to see her family again, to feel the warmth of home she had been taken from. The rancher noticed her looking toward the horizon, her eyes distant and thoughtful. He understood, even without her words, that she wanted more than just safety within these walls. She wanted her life back, the life that had been stolen from her for a time. He approached gently, kneeling beside her and speaking softly. Though she did not understand every word, the tone told her that he wanted to help her find what she was searching for. Together, they prepared for a journey beyond the ranch. The girl felt a mix of hope and anxiety. She had learned to trust the rancher, yet the thought of leaving the safety he provided made her nervous. The open land beyond the fence was vast, just as it had been the night she had been tied to the tree. But now she had strength, guidance, and confidence she had never possessed before. The fear that had once paralyzed her was still there in her mind, but it had become smaller, manageable, and balanced by hope. As they traveled, the girl began to notice the details of the land anew. The grass swayed in gentle waves, the wind carried the scent of flowers and earth, and small animals darted through the brush. Each sound reminded her of the night she had been alone, but now each detail was different. The world was no longer a place of fear, it was alive, full of opportunity and signs of life. She realized that she could move through it safely, that she could exist in the world without constant terror. The rancher guided her carefully, showing her paths that were safe, teaching her to observe the land for signs of danger, and helping her move with confidence. They stopped occasionally, resting in the shade of a tree or beside a stream, where she could drink water and regain her energy. Each pause gave her time to reflect, to breathe, and to appreciate the small victories of survival. Slowly, she began to feel proud of her own resilience. During these quiet moments, she shared pieces of her story with the rancher through gestures and drawings in the dirt. She showed the places where she had been tied, the trees and the open land, and the fear she had endured. The rancher listened patiently, never judging, never rushing her, simply offering understanding and care. She realized that sharing her story helped her release some of the pain she had carried alone. She began to understand that she was not powerless anymore. She had survived, and she had someone who cared for her. As they neared the outskirts of the plains where she had been taken from, the girl's anxiety grew. Memories of the capture, the terror of being tied to the tree, and the long hours of uncertainty returned. She wanted to see her family, yet she feared what she might find. Would they even recognize her? Would they be angry, afraid, or welcoming? The rancher noticed her hesitation and held her hand gently, letting her know that she was safe for now, and that together they would face whatever came next. Finally, they reached a small village where her family lived. The girl's heart pounded as she saw familiar shapes and faces in the distance. Her legs trembled, but the rancher guided her forward, steadying her as she moved. She took a deep breath, preparing herself for the moment she had been longing for since the terrifying day she had been taken. Her mother was the first to notice her. Recognition and disbelief filled her face as she rushed forward, calling her daughter's name. The girl ran toward her, falling into her mother's arms, and for a moment the world felt right again. Tears streamed down both their faces, blending grief, relief, and overwhelming joy. Her father followed closely behind, his expression a mix of anger, worry, and finally, happiness as he embraced her. The girl felt the warmth of her family, the safety and love she had been missing, and for the first time in a long time she felt whole. The rancher stood back, giving the family space, though the girl's eyes found him immediately. She wanted him to see that she was safe, that she had returned to those who loved her. She gestured toward him, pointing and smiling shyly. Her family turned to the rancher, gratitude and respect shining in their eyes. They understood what he had done, what courage and kindness had saved their daughter's life. They welcomed him quietly, offering thanks for his bravery and compassion. The days that followed were filled with quiet reunions, shared meals, and the slow rebuilding of trust and connection. The girl stayed close to her family, yet she often thought of the rancher, remembering how he had protected her when the world had seemed entirely cruel. She realized that his courage had given her a chance not only to survive, but to return to those she loved. His actions had changed the course of her life forever. The rancher remained nearby for a time, helping the family understand what had happened during her disappearance. He told them of the dangers of the land, the night she had been left alone, and the moments when he had intervened to save her. The family listened with a mixture of awe and gratitude. They realized that without his bravery, the girl might not have survived. His selfless courage became a story that would be remembered in their family for generations. As the girl recovered, she began to regain her confidence fully. She learned to move through the land again, to play, laugh, and feel safe without constant fear. She learned that the world could be both harsh and kind, that danger could exist but so could courage and care. The lessons of the ranch, the patient guidance, and the protection she had received became a part of her understanding of life. Though the memory of the night tied to the tree would never fully disappear, it no longer ruled her. She had faced it, survived it, and found safety through the kindness of another human being. She realized that fear could be confronted, that hope could grow even in the darkest times, and that one act of courage could change everything. In time, the girl began to tell her own story to others in the village. She spoke quietly, carefully about what had happened and how she had survived. She told of the wilderness, of the fear, and of the rancher who had saved her life with bravery and compassion. People listened, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others moved to tears. Her story became a lesson for others, a reminder of both the dangers of the land and the power of kindness. The rancher eventually returned to his own life, leaving the girl with her family, but his presence remained a permanent part of her story. She thought of him often, remembering the strength, patience, and courage he had shown. She understood that his actions had not only saved her life, but had also shown her the meaning of bravery, compassion, and trust. The girl's life gradually returned to a sense of normalcy, but she carried the lessons of her experience with her forever. She learned to be cautious but not fearful, to trust but wisely, and to value courage and kindness in others. Her family, grateful and protective, helped her heal emotionally and physically. Slowly, the trauma that had threatened to define her life became part of her story of survival and resilience. As she grew older, she often thought about the day she had been tied to the tree and left alone. The memory of that fear never fully left her, but neither did the memory of the man who had saved her. She realized that life was a mixture of danger and protection, cruelty and kindness, fear and hope. She learned that the moments of courage and care in our lives could shape our future in ways we might never fully understand. One quiet evening, years after the terrifying day, she stood on the edge of the plains, looking at the tree in the distance where her ordeal had begun. She felt a mixture of fear, respect, and gratitude. The land that had almost taken her life had also taught her strength. And she thought of the rancher, the man who had risked everything to save her. She whispered a silent thank you into the wind, knowing that his courage had given her life back. The story of the Comanche girl who had been tied to a tree, left to face the beasts alone, and then saved by a single act of bravery, became one that she carried in her heart forever. It was a story of survival, of fear confronted, of hope reclaimed, and of the enduring power of human kindness. It reminded her, and everyone who would hear it, that even in the darkest moments, courage and compassion could shine, guiding the way to safety and a new beginning. In the years that followed, she grew strong, wise, and resilient. She remembered her family, the rancher, and the lessons of survival and trust. Though the memory of terror lingered, it no longer controlled her. She had survived, she had healed, and she had learned that even the smallest acts of courage could change the course of a life forever. And so, the girl who had once been left alone on the plains learned that fear could be faced, hope could be restored, and life, no matter how harsh, could still be full of safety, love, and the possibility of new beginnings.